He said he was behind the D Wade shit. You mad disrespectful. D Wade was excited. He said he was just happy to get the statue. Yeah, that was his son. His son was like, "Oh, nah, I don't look nothing like you." He was like, D Wade mouth like, "Yeah, I know." Yeah, D Wade was like, "Yeah, I know." Yeah, you do know, nigga. That's yeah. Where the fuck is this nigga X at? Fuck. I don't jog, do push-ups and all that shit. This nigga been coming since he's been coming to my crib since 10 o'clock. She will be over there at 10, bro. He said, "Don't be over there at 10." I was like, "Where you at, nigga? It's 1 o'clock." Hey, I done took this bitch to the train. I was like, I'm the only nigga I think like that can't successfully seal the deal no more. Like dad tried, you feel me? I dad tried. I probably didn't try as hard as I should, but I dad tried, you feel me? And it was just like it just felt wrong. Like it felt bad. He was like, "Nah, you ain't supposed to be doing this." And I'm on live, so I can't really like disclose. I had it and it was up over it for me. And I just was like, man, I'm like, yo, no lie, you gotta get out. I didn't go on. I'm out of here. You know too much. Yeah, it don't hit the same. It don't hit the same. Like, it ain't like, oh, damn, yeah, I need that. Come in. It's like, you want me another headache? The difference between the two. What's the difference between the two? Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. Like that. How you doing today, man? Mm-hmm. Which is the first one there when you love me, just got love for me. That's that's wild. Now love is love. Mm-hmm. That's so that is unconditional again. That's what niggas be hoping. That's what niggas be hoping they land on for me and be shown like as a dude. I honestly feel like we show that first. We show unconditionalness first. Unconditionality, excuse me, first. Like I'm gonna show you that like I can love you unconditional with no strings attached for me, and until you show me otherwise, and then I'm gonna be a butthole. This is the word. What you about to do? Yeah, whatever about it downstairs. Nah, that's dumb funny. About to tell you the Prince thing today. We sit down and come up with some ideas. Bro, nigga, what up? One time today, one time. Daz, what's the word? My guy. How you been, bro? How the hell are you, Daz? How the hell are you, brother? How the hell are you, brother? Missed you. Haven't seen you in a while, brother. That's good, bro. That's good to hear, bro. How's the job? How's the job treating you? No, I'm alive. I'm for gang. The whole time. They break the thing. That's what's up, Brody. You been taking a break and shit? That's what's up. Sometimes we need to unplug and unwind. I'm happy for you. Shit, I'd have pulled that out. And then smell the bottle. I've been drinking. I've been drinking fucking 2 weeks straight. Something wrong with me. That's how you know that's your block. You know, life been alright, bro. For me, um, life been alright. Just working, music. I'm saving money to take a trip. You know, overseas. That's it. Just really prioritizing and then going after it. Setting goals and just going after it. That's all. That's really all I've been doing. Staying to myself, trying to just build trying to build myself up basically. Let me build my little triangle up and to do what I gotta do. But I just been regular shit. How's your son, gang? How your little bro? I need to I need to do cover. I need to do a cover art, But I could dead drop the song. I could drop the song. I could drop the song whenever. I just wanted to drop it with cover art. But shit, I'm about to just put ATM. I'm gonna just put big ATM feature. You know what I mean? Just not even no feature. It's literally ATM. Not talking about for the song, for the song for the video. Yeah, I want to drop the song before I drop the video. That's what I was. That's what I wanted. That's what I was doing last night. I typed that into AI, the AI procedure generated shit, and I typed in ATM on the tour bus, and it literally was showing ATMs on a tour bus, like like literal ATMs on a fucking tour bus. Uh, I was like, yeah, you gotta be. I gotta be more specific. I can't be that general with AI. Well, he already hates school. I don't blame him. Hey, I don't blame him either, man. I don't blame him either. I'm not saying don't go to school, but I'm just saying he hates school. I don't blame him. I understand where it's coming from. This nigga probably waiting for hours. Man, this nigga, he waiting for hours, which means that he about to cop some fine. Yeah, copy. All right, gang, just hit me. I'm here. Later, my boy. Save you. I feel like I was on the phone with my bro. On the phone with my brother coming nothing, nothing. I feel my girl's taking the train ride to. My girlfriend's going to the Chris Brown concert right in DC. Of course, I ain't but anyway, for the most part though, she's on her way and she's telling me how the bathroom's thinking shit. That's dumb funny. That's dumb funny. That's funny. I don't know nobody that likes school for real, for real. Just being honest. I mean, well, this nigga that likes school, I don't know nobody that likes school. Come on, you call a nigga and then shag it because you know a nigga still at work. Like, this nigga's talking about government shutdown. Truthfully, can't help but talk about it. It really matters. I'm not gonna talk about it. I was thinking, Pooh Shiesty home? Wow. I don't care, but wow. Guys, what's up with about to be a Marvel Max? That's 5 years. Some of our least favorite characters. The story is going to be. Nigga,
After Xbox decided to raise the prices. Stephen A. Smith, well, initially, which sounds you.
This nigga, Stephen A. Smith, never seems to amaze me. How much he can shove him too long. As DC Comics. Alright, let's see, dude. What's the work for the day? So for the day. What's everybody doing today? So far. I know you find that you ain't gonna
NBA your favorite team. So lead the league in assists. Also, then, yet they can't rule the time. Jalen, with the next step in. This is infectious. The ball movement this year, you're going to see a lot of the similar. For a lot. A lot. And goes to open. That's one thing is on the other side. Down the baseline.
Bro, they traded Porzingis to the Hawks. Holy snap, I didn't know that. That's beast. The Rockets might be a problem and shit. They might be. I'm not saying they're gonna come out, but they're gonna make some noise. Ooh.
Jackson, over his former team. I'm going to try to fix this for the Falcons over the network again to see if they're okay with it. But she won't fix the tie. I'm going to go with the tie. The entire phase because the combo dumps it down. You spent too much money on food and too much money on clothes. To pass that up, stories right next to it. You want to say Kevin on Wednesday too. No, but we're a team. You got to stick together as a team. Check it out. Another one. Johnson turns it over. Off with the run out. Kill him. That's what Johnson does. So that's when the E is a runner. So patience here from Sheffield. He wants some movement, but it's on the ball. Trying to dump it on board. This is what the fourth. Stephen Adams will go. So, I can't do it, but it's yeah, the biggest thing I was talking about earlier, Steve, nobody can healthy ability, Houston was able to maintain Steve Adams. Watching that handle, not like winding down at the long two. You don't know what he can get at any time with his athleticism. You know the lane? Right now, it's true. Richard Shea is not his best. Maybe if he uses his legs for his paper, whatever he needs. Every time he gets a good shot, sure, he can place it up there. Read the Shea, top heavy. Only 24 draft, not that down shot. 35. He's been going to let down. Switch 54. Insane. And a bunch of better game. Not the bigger one. I don't know if there's a better athlete we have in our game. I mean, Giannis, Antetokounmpo, Big Thompson, getting better than Alexander Walker. Circling. And the Dante blocking the back. Like leapfrog there, Chip or Dante. On that three, the former Caleb Houston. Aaron Holiday did it right. Wide open. Wide open. They start making those plays. It's down with the ball, but you know, you got the even more aggressive. Offensive rebound after Houston.
Wow, bro. Oh,
Great James found like did good. Davison stepping to his left. Oh! It's on the left. Davison down with 8 blocks. There's that to him. That podcast. I don't believe it. But Jim, I don't think about something that he needs to start with his ball and said, so, right idea, bad execution by Holiday. Speaking of maturity, there's no question about that. Working on data, Wallace, picked up by Holiday over the top of the ball. Looking forward to it as well. Like a preseason debut on the same thing goes down. Then the ones go up there. There you go. Yep. That shot. There's no move for it. It's a late one. That's it. Going down. Made it to the top of the end of the clock. Pretty shot. It's shooting it really well.
Yeah, I dropped. What you doing?
Substance in the GNC. Or GNC almost get 20% below it, so we almost scared 15.
The Scythians. The Scythians, nomads who dressed in human skin. If you were alive around 700 BCE and you saw a horse archer riding fast across the grasslands, there's a good chance you were about to die. These weren't just warriors. They were Scythians, nomadic, brutal, and disturbingly creative when it came to decorating with body parts.
That was my Brody.
Skin, bones, nothing went to waste. The Greeks were
Oh,
terrible.
that's
Herodotus,
I'm not
writing
voting
in
on
the
the
5th
phone.
century BCE, said the
This
Scythians
is
drank the
another
blood of
camera.
the first man they killed in battle. Not a metaphor. First kill, bottoms up. And that was just the start of the welcome party. They lived in what's now Ukraine, southern Russia, and parts of Kazakhstan. No cities, no walls, just thousands of armored riders who could shoot an arrow while doing backflips on a horse. The Scythians didn't believe in defense. Their strategy was simple: strike first, kill fast, and take everything that wasn't nailed in. Captives weren't just taken, they were processed. Scythians were known for scalping their enemies and turning the skins into souvenirs. They would stretch out the scalps, tan them like leather, and hang them from their horse bridles.
I
If
think
you
we
saw
will.
a guy riding past with 10 bloody
I
flaps
guess we
swinging
will.
from the saddle, that wasn't decoration. That was
I'm
skill.
supposed to be coming over there later.
Elite warriors went
I don't
full
know.
camel level. They
I have a
turned
brother
human
who's
skin
supposed to
into
pull it off.
cloaks, belts, and even quivers to hold their arrows. Biceps,
That
they
we
great
get
leather straps. The thighs, premium patchwork for armor. It wasn't survival. It was a fashion statement. Wearing your enemy was a mark of honor. You didn't just beat them, you wore them. They also loved collecting skulls. And not just any skulls.
That's
The
beast.
skulls of the people they personally killed. Once you
All
had
right, bro. Think you can pull it up later, gang.
sand down the bone.
Enjoy the rest of your day at work.
Sometimes they coated it in gold. Imagine throwing a dinner party where your wine glasses were actual pennies. That was Tuesday for a Scythian chief. Funerals were no less insane. When a king died, dozens of people had to die with him. Wives, servants, horses, even royal chefs. They were all strangled or stabbed and buried in a giant tomb mound called a kurgan. Archaeologists have found them with gold, weapons, and skeletons arranged neatly around the king with morbid furniture.
I think so. I
One
come with
burial
me.
in
nigga.
Altai held
I gotta take them out too.
tattooed skin, still clothes, and her horses, because who wants to walk in the afterlife? Their drug habits? Also why? Herodotus claimed Scythians got high by throwing hemp seeds on hot stones inside tents, then sitting in the smoke and shouting for joy. Scientists thought that was a joke until they found scorched hemp seeds and bronze braziers in a 2,400-year-old tomb in Siberia.
That's
Turns
hot.
out they were running ancient hot box saunas in the middle of nowhere. Because after playing your enemies, sometimes you just need to chill. But Scythian violence wasn't random. It was part of their culture. Young warriors didn't
Nah, they really killing
kill
it.
someone in battle. No kill, no rank. Some tribes even refused to let you eat at the adult table unless you brought a human scalp as proof.
Nah, that's
And if you
crazy.
were wondering how they remembered their victories, don't worry. Some kept notebooks made from strips of human skin.
Ah,
The thing is, Scythians were surprisingly organized. They had women warriors.
yo, that
complex
is
races.
beast. Nah, that's beast.
They fought the
Shout outs to
Persians
Animated
for
Lifelines, man.
513
Shout outs to that
BC.
man on
The
YouTube.
Persian king brought a massive force into Scythian land. The Scythians, they didn't fight the
Later, Brody.
They just kept riding in circles, burning their
I'm about to get back to streaming every day, bro.
supplies. After weeks of this, Darius turned back. He came with a full army and left with sunburn and humiliation. So what finally ended them? Time. Empires rose, borders hardened, and other horse tribes took over. By the 3rd century CE, the Scythians faded into history, but they didn't go quiet. Their legacy lived on in fear and body parts. The Hittites, bureaucrats of misery. If ancient empires were high school cliques, the Hittites were the cold, quiet ones who knew how to make people disappear. They didn't yell, they didn't brag. They just wrote everything down and killed you with stunning efficiency. You stole a goat, there's a rule for that. You insulted a noble, there's a punishment. You tried to rebel, there's a crater where your city used to be. The Hittite Empire
That's
ruled much of
OD.
Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, Starting around 1600 BCE, their capital, Hattusa, looked peaceful enough. Stone walls, royal archives, lots of sheep. But behind the clay tablets and temple bells was a war machine that could torture your town and send your kids to the mines. Let's start with their legal system. The Hittites had a big function. If you committed adultery, you could be burned alive or mutilated. Depends on your social class. Stole from a temple, death. Lied in court, cut off your nose. Their laws stretched over 200 clay tablets, each one cataloging crimes, fines, and the best way to wreck your day. Second chances. They were big on making examples. But laws were just for women. The army was the real nightmare. The Hittites built chariots with 3 men, one to drive, one to shield, one to kill. These weren't joyrides. These were thundering death throes. When they sacked cities, they didn't just take loot. They took people, thousands of them. Prisoners of war were forced into labor camps, digging in copper mines until their lungs gave out. If you were lucky, you got assigned to a temple to chop wood. If you weren't, you were building roads until you collapsed from heat stroke. They fought the Egyptians at the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE. That was one of the largest chariot battles in history. Ramses II, the Egyptian pharaoh, claimed he won. The Hittites also claimed they won. In reality, it was a draw, but the Hittites walked away with the upper hand. Egypt signed a peace treaty, the first known international treaty in history, because even the pharaoh didn't believe it. The Hittites were also really when a city rebelled, their kings made it to suppress the rebellion,
Yesterday was
but not
Wednesday.
before dragging the city's rulers in chains, executing the leaders in front of everyone, and enslaving the rest. Hittite records bragged about stacking heads at city gates. One king said he left the corpses to rot in the sun so their stench would spread fear. Charming. Religious sacrifice? Also terrifying. They believed their gods needed constant attention, and sometimes that meant blood. Animal sacrifices were common, but when things got bad, plague, drought, invasion, they turned to people. They buried victims alive or burned them to purify the land. Some rituals involved killing an animal and rubbing its blood on a sick person. If the sickness didn't go away, the person was blamed for offending the gods. Execution followed. Problem solved. The Hittites didn't spare their own either. If you worked in the palace and screwed up, they didn't fire you. They cursed your entire family. One scribe got caught altering a religious text. His punishment? Death by stoning, and his house burned to the ground. They didn't just erase your name, they erased your bloodline. But it wasn't all killing and curses. Sometimes they liked to get creative. One king wrote about crushing a city, then making the survivors carry its stones across the mountains to build them a new palace. That's right, you survived the invasion, and your reward is becoming human scaffolding. Build the king's house, or die tired. By the time of King Suppilulian, I tried saying that 5 times fast. The Hittites were controlling trade routes from the Mediterranean to
Get me out of here.
If a neighbor resisted tribute, Hittite messengers delivered 2 options, gifts or fire. Most cities went with gifts, but even bureaucratic monsters have weaknesses. Around 1200s BCE, the Hittite Empire collapsed during the Bronze Age catastrophe, a massive regional breakdown involving famine, climate change, and invading sea peoples who no one can fully identify. Hattusa was abandoned, burned, and left in ruins. Nobody bothered to rebuild it. That's how scared everyone was of sticking around. For centuries, the Hittites were forgotten. Their language was lost. Their history buried under ashes stone. It wasn't until 1906 that archaeologists recovered Hattusa and found 10000 clay tablets detailing how terrifyingly organized these people really were. The Hittites didn't yell. They just wrote your name down, and then they crushed you. The Celts, wereheads were currency. When Rome first marched into Gaul, they didn't find uncivilized farmers. They found people who thought cutting off heads was part of the Tuesday. The Celts, who once moved across modern France, Britain, Ireland, and parts of Central Europe, were smart, spiritual, and deeply into skulls. Like, really into skulls. These weren't fringe warriors. By 400 BC, Celtic tribes stretched from Spain to Turkey. They built fortified towns, traded with Greece, minted coins, and knew how to use a sword. But diplomacy wasn't really their thing. If you made them angry, they'd sack your city, chop off your head, and nail it to a wall. And they'd do it all, shirtless, painted blue, and screaming like banshees. According to Greek historians like Diodorus Siculus, Roman generals, and Caesar, Celts would pull out heads of enemies they killed, hanging from horses, belts,
Oh my God! Thank God that nigga's out of it.
You didn't just win a fight, you brought back a face to prove it. Some chieftains even embalmed heads in cedar oil and kept them as dinner decorations. The more heads you had, the more badass you were. Skull walls weren't horror movie props, they were status symbols. Then there were the Druids.
Sorry.
Forget the wise, bearded nature lovers you've seen in cartoons. Real Druids were judges, priests, astronomers, and ritual killers. Roman sources, especially Caesar's commentary on the Bella Gallica, accused Druids of overseeing human sacrifices to please gods like Teutates and Tyrannus. The most disturbing method? The Wicker Man. Yes, the giant, human-shaped effigy was real. According to Caesar, Druids stuffed it full of live victims, sometimes criminals, sometimes just unlucky, and set it on fire as a public ritual. Was Caesar exaggerating? Maybe, but archaeological finds back up some of it. At Lindo Moss in England, a body now known as the Lindo Man was discovered in a bog with 3 separate causes of death: strangled, bashed in the head, and throat slit. All signs point to a ritual killer. That's some serious overkill, even by ancient standards. When warriors weren't decapitating enemies, they were fighting each other for glory. Tribal rivalries
Be real with
and
you?
constant skirmishes. Young warriors had to prove
I
themselves.
just
in battle.
had it,
Win a duel? Great. You might get a spot at the feasting table.
and I'm stuck up. It's a toss between Biz and the Pearls. I'm
Celtic
not gonna lie.
society was basically one
Biz
long
and the
audition
Pearls.
who could
And I'm leaning more towards the Pearls
Celtic women
just
were
because
just as fierce. Unlike Greek or Roman women,
of the trueness to the 3 poles, the ash is great, the shit had that picture I took and put on the gram,
famously
all that was from the
against
Pearls.
Rome in 60
That's
CE,
big ass black spot from the Pearls. That shit had the blunt doing
including London,
stupid shit.
and killed thousands of soldiers.
Yo.
The
That's
Romans
the popping and
eventually
bacon.
crushed their enemies, but they
Shit.
never forgot the woman.
I was like, oh nah, ash was great. I was like, oh shit, this shit was really good. 3 poles I was in, smack, being up over there, smack.
Mocked and sacrificed. In some
I'm
cases,
pushing to the limit. I'm putting 3 months straight. I was like, bitch, dead.
the Celts
Had
didn't
to
believe
go to
in
sleep.
clean. Pain was part of the ritual.
Gotta say that
It was a spiritual transaction. The more dramatic the death, the more impressive the offer. Still, none of that stopped Rome. By the 1st century CE, the Romans had pushed deep into
That's
Celtic
fire.
territory. They outlawed
You can't go wrong, bitch.
Druids,
All that.
sacrifice, and began to
Even the-
dismantle
even-
tribal
even the-
structures.
Even the King
Temples
Mama.
were replaced with
The
Roman
King Mama's good
The
too.
skulls came down.
But it ain't up there. It's good. Like King Mama good too. That should have done. If you smoke the King Mama by itself, that should have dust you.
Stories of
That
cursed
should have dust you. I'm
roads,
not gonna lie to
Roman
you. I ain't
giants,
saying hate like
talking
that.
skulls
That
stuck
should have
around
that
the
dust you. That should
centuries.
dusted me. It was
And
times
modern archaeologists
where I was like,
confirming
I stayed. It's crazy. I say that for last. That's the crazy thing. I say that shit for last. But I was just in love with the taste of the biz, and I was in love with the high of the pearls. So I could mix both of them together. But smoking the pearls by itself, that shit was like a go to sleep.
Empire in antiquity. The Assyrians
It was
would
like a
take
go to
it,
sleep.
melt it down, and use the metal.
Honorable mention, Sherlock.
These weren't just comforters.
Honorable mention, Sherlock. That
From
motherfucker.
around 900 to 600 BCE, the
That
Neo-Assyrian
shit-
Empire
it looked
turned mass
good.
killings into policy. And their idea of diplomacy was leveling your city and writing about it in stone. Let's get the timeline straight. The Assyrians started as a small kingdom in northern Mesopotamia. By the 9th century BCE, they were steamrolling their neighbors. Under kings like
I
Athrus
didn't think he was gonna beat the right slapper, the permanent
they built
marker.
an
I ain't think he
empire
was gonna.
stretching from modern
You
Iraq
feel
to
me? He
Egypt.
beat that shit.
How? With spears, siege engines, and a full-blown addiction to cruelty. Ashurbanipal II once bragged about stacking corpses in front of city gates and flaying rebel leaders alive. Not poetic exaggeration, actual policy. He had the records carved in cuneiform so future kings could learn from his work. I cut off their heads, he wrote. I built a tower of heads in front of their city.
Woman out, I had a headache. I
The
just,
Assyrians invented
Fried.
tactics that would
Oh,
make
what
even
it be?
medieval inquisitors
no, it don't be no headache, but
They
my
got
head be
creative
feeling
with punishment.
fried. That should be
slaying,
like.
staking, and the occasional eye removal. Just to keep things alive. If you surrender.
I didn't happen to put the game down for a second.
Resist, your
Just
city
sit
brother,
here,
your
fried.
leaders
Like,
will
oh
torture
no,
you,
I
and
those
your
off
children
for
will
a minute.
marched away in chains.
Daydream, staring at the ceiling.
Assyrian
They
kings
snap
filled
back
their
into it.
palaces with murals showing exactly what they did, playing scenes, beheadings, mass deportations. It was ancient propaganda, carved in stone. A throne room in Nineveh featured a mural of a king sipping wine while his enemies
Nah,
severed
the
heads
pearl
from
ain't
the
even
tree
need to
behind.
weed. That was
That
crazy.
was
Like the
horror.
pearl, man, I ain't even
That
the
was
alcohol
terror
with pearl.
design.
I was just
Their
drinking it
siege
because it was
tactics were brutal in
Like,
advance. They built massive
yeah.
battering rams,
Didn't even
dug
need that
tunnels
shit.
under walls, and used archers to pick off defenders. Once the walls fell, the real nightmare began. Looting, assaults, and forced relocations were standard. Entire populations were uprooted and dumped into other parts of the empire. Over 4 million people were defeated during the height of the Assyrian War. That's not conflict. That's ethnic cleansing. Even religion couldn't offer mercy. The Assyrians believed their god Ashur wanted total dominance.
Yo,
So naturally,
got
every
weed roll over?
kings described themselves as
Oh, I'm about
the
to say.
weapon of
I
Ashur.
got some more of that
If
Z
you
shit.
fought the
Feel me?
empire, you weren't just defying a king, you were insulting a god. That made your
I'm
punishment
about to hit us for the new menu.
heads rolled fast. King Sennacherib took it.
Oh, he said you remember you? The
In
small on and shit?
701 BCE, when the city of Babylon rebelled, he didn't just crush it, he flattened it, destroyed temples, demolished walls, diverted the Euphrates River to flood the ruins, and total annihilation. His own son later killed him, possibly because even other Assyrians thought he went too far. That's saying something. But the most feared king, Ashurbanipal, he ruled from 669 to 627 BCE and had a twisted flair for the dramatic.
Got
His
water.
greatest hits include parading
I really want
defeated
that.
chains,
I really want the giraffe pussy and
forcing him to wear
the
dog collars, and making him live in a
the
kennel. He
beluga
wrote letters
caviar.
bragging about feeding
Only
him
'cause, like,
corpses to jackals.
I ain't
And when
gonna
he
front.
captured rebel leaders,
When I
he
first
displayed
heard about
the
exotic,
types
I
of
heard
cigarettes.
about those strains. Well, not those strains. Let me not lie. I heard about the caviar strain. I heard about that.
He built a massive library with over
when I went-
3,000
Y'all niggas, you and Sean was already smoking on Diddy shit, so y'all already was for
and
me.
more. So yes,
Niggas
he
had-
played people
I had just
and also
got
preserved the epic of Gilgamesh.
started copping with y'all
Because
niggas,
nothing
started going
says
through with y'all
complex
niggas. I just started
like
experiencing.
mass torture and literature. By the late 7th century BC, the empire finally cracked. Years of rebellion, overextension, and pure exhaustion forced them. In 612 BCE, a coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and
That's
Scythians
that.
attacked
You
Nineveh.
gotta
The
roll.
once invincible
You not wrong
empire
about that.
collapsed almost overnight. The libraries burned. The murals crumbled. The terror machine shut down for good. Archaeologists digging up Assyrian sites in modern Iraq have found evidence of collapsed walls, crushed bones, and ash layers thick enough to prove one thing: the fall was fast, violent, and nobody bothered to save them. The Carthaginians. Ancient parenting with flames. Most people know Carthage as the city Rome eventually burned to the ground. But before that, it was one of the wealthiest, most powerful cities in the ancient world. Massive navy, brilliant merchants, and a real knack for building trade routes across the Mediterranean. But behind all the gold and purple robes was something darker, something that made even the Romans flinch. The Carthaginians burned children alive. A lot of them. Let's rewind. Carthage was founded around 814 BCE by Phoenician settlers from Tyre, modern-day Lebanon. It grew fast. By the 4th century BCE, it was a superpower. They controlled North Africa, parts of Spain, and several islands. They weren't just traders. They were strategic, rich, and ruthless. They also had gods to feed. The two big ones were Baal, Hammon, and Tanna, powerful, fiery deities. And when Carthaginians wanted something, a good harvest, a military victory, maybe just better weather, they gave them gifts. And the best gift? A firstborn child. This wasn't underground. This wasn't rare. It was state-sponsored ritual sacrifice. When archaeologists dug up the Tophet of Carthage, a sacred burial ground, they found thousands of urns. Inside were the cremated remains of infants, toddlers, and sometimes small animals. The oldest layers date back to the 8th century BCE. The practice continued for at least 600 years. Greek and Roman writers didn't hold back. Plutarch, Diodorus, and Tertullian all describe the same thing. Children placed on the outstretched arms of a bronze statue of Baal. A fire blazed beneath. The metal heated up. The child rolled into the flames. Drums and flutes flared to drown out the students, and the crowd applauded. Now, modern historians have debated this. Some think the children died naturally and were buried ceremonially, but the science doesn't back that up. Burn patterns on bones show signs of live cremation. Chemical tests confirm the infants were often only a few months old, and the inscriptions were chilling. Many urns have dedications like, "To our Lord Baal, in thanks." It was gratitude, not grief. And this wasn't just poor families. Rich elites were the most likely to offer their children because it showed deeper devotion. Some inscriptions even call out the family names, proudly declaring who sacrificed who. It was a religious status symbol, like donating a wing to a church, except your donation stream. If things got really bad, famine, military losses, plagues, the sacrifices increased. Greek historian Plutarchus claimed that during one crisis, 200 noble children were sacrificed in a single day. And when families ran out of kids, they adopted orphans or bought poor children to burn in their place. Because if your gods want blood, logistics must be handled. One Carthaginian legend even tells of King Hamilcar sacrificing his own son during a military defeat, tossed him into the flames without hesitation. And no, not the famous General Hamilcar, that was his other son. Lucky break for the guy who went on to lead war elephants over the Alps. The Carthaginians didn't see it as murder. They believed it was a divine trait, life for favor. It wasn't cruel, it was necessary, a parent's ultimate act of loyalty. But the Romans, they were horrified. And this is a civilization that made people fight to the death in sport. When Rome finally defeated Carthage in 140 BCE, they destroyed the city, scattered the population and poured salt into the earth. Some say it was symbolic. Others think it was just old-fashioned rage. But here's the kicker. Even after the fall, the child sacrifices didn't stop immediately. The Tophet site shows Darius continuing into the Roman period. Old beliefs die hard, especially when fear is baked into the religion. Carthage was brilliant, powerful, and well-organized. But for all their greatness, their most famous legacy is a graveyard full of ancient bones. They didn't hide their horror. They built temples on it.
Keep your chest in shape.
If Game of Thrones and Horrible Histories had a love child raised by Quentin Tarantino, you'd get something close to the real-life saga of history's most brutal empires. We're talking less, winter is coming, and more, winter of absolute despair is already here, and it's wearing spiked boots. The Assyrian Empire, 911, 609 BCE. The Assyrian Empire wasn't exactly known for its gentle touch. These ancient conquerors wrote the book on intimidation tactics, and let's just say it wasn't a bedtime story. Ashurnasir Paul II, who reigned from 883 to 859 BCE, set a high bar for brutality. After conquering Suru in 879 BCE, he had the rebel leader flayed alive and used his skin to cover the city walls. Talk about leaving a lasting impression on your neighbors. The Assyrians were invented when it came to torture. Impalement became their trick. They shoved a pole, grease it up, and create a spectacle that would make even the bravest warrior think twice about resistance. Prisoners often waited days for their turn, probably contemplating their life choices. Mass deportations were another Assyrian spectacle. King Tiglath-Pileser III, ruling from 745 to 727 BCE, perfected this strategy. During his 734 BCE campaign against Syria and Palestine, he relocated over 13,000 people. It was like a forced march meets musical chairs, Assyrian styles. Sennacherib, who ruled from 705 to 681 BCE, took city destruction to new heights. In 689 BCE, he obliterated Babylon and diverted the Euphrates River to wash away the ruins. When it came to urban renewal, Sennacherib clearly believed in the burn it all down, start over approach. The notorious Ashurbanipal, reigning from 668 to 627 BCE, was known for his extensive library in Nineveh, but he also had a grim hobby, collecting enemy body parts. After defeating the Elamites in 653 BCE, he hung their in his garden. Evidently, Ashurbanipal's idea of garden gnomes was a bit more extreme than most. The Assyrian Empire's reign of terror finally ended in 609 BCE when a coalition of Babylonians and Medes sacked Nineveh. After centuries of being the bullies of the ancient world, the Assyrians found out what it felt like to be on the receiving end. The Achaemenid Persian Empire, 550, 330 BCE. The Achaemenid Persian Empire burst onto the world stage in 550 BCE, proving that when it comes to ruling with an iron fist, there's always room for innovation. Our story begins with Cyrus the Great, who apparently thought the Great wasn't quite enough of a title. In 539 BCE, he conquered Babylon, not by storming the gates, but by diverting the Euphrates and simply strolling in. It was less shock and awe and more surprise. We're your new landlords. Darius I, ruling from 522 to 486 BCE, had a unique approach to quelling rebellions. In 518 BCE, he crushed the Babylonian uprising by impaling 3,000 of the city's leading citizens. Nothing says let's all get along, quite like a forest of human skewers. Xerxes I, taking the throne in 486 BCE, decided to one-up his predecessors. When building a bridge across the Hellespont in 480 BCE for his invasion of Greece, he got a bit miffed when a storm destroyed it. His solution? He had the sea whipped 300 times and branded with hot irons. That'll teach those pesky waves. The Persians also perfected the art of psychological warfare. During the Battle of Pelusium in 525 BCE, Cambyses II used cats as shields, knowing the Egyptians wouldn't dare harm their sacred animals. It was the ancient equivalent of, I'm not hitting you, you're hitting yourself. But it wasn't all conquest and cruelty. The Persians also introduced the world's first postal service in 516 BCE. Of course, tampering with the king's mail was punishable by death, so think of it as FedEx with a side of mortal peril. The empire finally met its match in 330 BCE when Alexander the Great decided he wanted a piece of the action. After 2 centuries of Persian rule, it turned out there was always a bigger fish, or in this case, a more ambitious Macedonian. The Macedonian Empire, 336, 323 BCE, entered Alexander the Great, a man who looked at the known world and thought, I could probably own all of this. From 336 to 323 BCE, he embarked on a whirlwind tour of conquest that would make most travel influencers green with envy. In 335 BCE, Alexander kicked off his reign by crushing a Theban revolt. His idea of urban renewal, razing the entire city to the ground, except the temples and the house of the poet Pindar. Apparently, even megalomaniacs have a soft spot for good verse. The siege of Tyre in 332 BCE showed Alexander's flair for the dramatic. When the city refused to surrender, he built a half-mile causeway to reach it. It was like an extreme edition of Extreme Makeover City Edition, except instead of a new community center, Tyre got total destruction. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, Alexander faced off against Darius III's massive Persian army. Outnumbered 5-1, Alexander still won, proving that sometimes it's not the size of the army, but how you use it. In India, Alexander's troops faced war elephants for the first time at the Battle of Hydaspes in 326 BCE. His solution? Arrange his troops in a massive phalanx that looked like a giant hedgehog. Who knew that the key to defeating elephants was to cosplay as an oversized porcupine? But Alexander's most brutal moment came during his return from India. The march through the Gedrosian Desert in 325 BCE resulted in the deaths of 3/4 of his army. Turns out, the Great wasn't so great at reading maps or understanding basic human needs like water. Despite his short reign, Alexander's empire stretched from Greece to India. He founded over 70 cities, most of them named Alexandria. Talk about an ego trip. This guy was basically the ancient world's equivalent of a guy naming all of his kids after himself. Alexander's empire crumbled soon after his death in 323 BCE, proving that while you can conquer the world, you can't take it with you. The Roman Empire, 27 BCE, 476 CE. Welcome to the Roman Empire, where togas were fashionable and conquest was always in season. From 27 BCE to 476 CE, Rome went from a small Italian city-state to the Mediterranean's biggest bully. Let's start with Julius Caesar, who kicked off Rome's imperial ambitions with a bang. During his Gallic Wars from 58 to 50 BCE, he managed to kill or enslave about 1/3 of Gaul's population. That's roughly 1 million dead and another million enslaved. Caesar's famous quote, "I came, I saw, I conquered," should have included, "I depopulated." Next up, everyone's favorite madman, Caligula, who ruled from 37 to 41 CE. This charmer once wished the Roman people had a single neck so he could behead them all at once. He also tried to make his horse a consul. Clearly, he was more a stable genius than we thought. Nero, emperor from 54 to 68 CE, took Rome's persecution of Christians to new heights. After the Great Fire of Rome in 64 CE, he blamed the Christians and turned them into human torches to light his gardens. Talk about taking light of the world way too literally. Let's not forget the Colosseum, opened in 80 CE under Titus. This massive arena could hold 50,000 spectators, all eager to watch gladiators fight to the death. It was like pay-per-view, but with more lions and less pay. The Roman Empire wasn't just about conquest and cruelty, though. They also gave us roads, aqueducts, and the calendar. Of course, they also gave us lead pipes, which might explain some of their crazier emperors. In 212 CE, Emperor Caracalla granted Roman citizenship to all free men in the empire. It wasn't out of the goodness of his heart, though. He just wanted to tax more people. Ancient Rome, where even citizenship came with a catch. The empire finally fell in 476 CE when Germanic chieftain Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus. After nearly 500 years, it turned out Rome wasn't so eternal after all. But hey, at least they left us some cool ruins to take selfies with. The Mongol Empire, where horseback riding and world domination went hand in hand. From 1206 to 1368, these steppe warriors redefined the meaning of going global. It all kicked off with Genghis Khan, the man who united the Mongol tribes in 1206. His idea of diplomacy, submit or die. Not exactly a master of subtlety, our Genghis. In 1219, Genghis launched his invasion of the Khwarezmian Empire. When the Shah insulted Mongol ambassadors, Genghis responded by obliterating entire cities, Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench, all reduced to rubble. Urban planning, Mongol style, if it exists, destroyed. The sack of Baghdad in 1258 under Hulagu Khan was particularly brutal. The Mongols destroyed the House of Wisdom, dumping so many books into the Tigris that the river ran black with ink. Talk about taking throw the book at them too literally. Let's not forget Timur, who ruled from 1370 to 1405. He had a penchant for building pyramids of skulls. After conquering Delhi in 1398, he massacred 100,000 prisoners and used their heads to build several towers. Clearly, Timur thought skyscraper meant something very different. The Mongols weren't all about destruction, though. They established the Yam, a vast postal system spanning their empire. Of course, this mostly served to relay orders for more conquest and destruction. But hey, points for efficiency. Under Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis, the empire reached its peak. He completed the conquest of China in 1279, establishing the Yuan dynasty. Kublai even tried invading Japan, twice. Both times, his fleets were destroyed by typhoons. The Japanese called it divine wind, kamikaze. The Mongols probably called it really bad luck. The Mongol Empire eventually fragmented and was finally ousted from China in 1368. Their legacy? A death toll in the tens of millions, a new world order, and the dubious honor of creating the largest contiguous land empire in history. Not bad for a bunch of nomads who started out herding goats. The Aztec Empire. Welcome to the Aztec Empire, where human sacrifice was just another day at the office. From 1428 to 1521, these Mesoamerican powerhouses turned central Mexico into a theocratic state with a bloodthirsty twist. The empire kicked off in 1428 when Tenochtitlan formed a triple alliance with Texcoco and Tlacopan. Their motto might as well have been go big or go home. By 1519, they controlled most of central Mexico. At the heart of Aztec culture was human sacrifice, and boy, did they take it seriously. During the reconsecration of the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan in 1487, they sacrificed an estimated 8,400 prisoners in just 4 days. That's 20,100 hearts ripped out per day. Talk about a grueling work schedule. The Aztecs also had a unique approach to warfare called the Flower Wars. These ritualized battles were specifically designed to capture prisoners for sacrifice. Imagine going to war not to kill your enemies, but to take them home for a deadly dinner party. Montezuma II, who ruled from 1502 to 1520, took Aztec brutality to new heights. He expanded the empire aggressively and ramped up human sacrifice. His daily menu reportedly included the flesh of sacrificed young boys. Talk about a leader with exotic tastes. The Aztecs weren't all about bloodshed. They created sophisticated systems of agriculture, education, and medicine. They even had a form of universal education, although the curriculum probably included Sacrifice 101. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was a marvel of engineering built on a lake. With a population of 200,000, it was one of the largest cities in the world. Of course, it also had a giant pyramid where they ripped out hearts, so it wasn't exactly a tourist paradise. The empire met its match in 1519 when Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés showed up. By 1521, the Aztec Empire had fallen. Turns out, all that human sacrifice didn't make them immune to smallpox or Spanish cannons. The Spanish Empire. Ahoy, mateys, let's set sail with the Spanish Empire, where the sun never set and neither did the ambition. From 1492 to 1976, Spain went from a newly unified kingdom to a global powerhouse that would make even Midas blush. It all kicked off in 1492 when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered the Americas. Of course, the millions of people already living there were a bit surprised to learn they needed discovering. The real brutality began with the conquistadors. Take Hernán Cortés, who landed in Mexico in 1519 with 600 men and left the Aztec Empire in ruins by 1521. His secret? A lethal combination of guns, germs, and steel, plus a hefty dose of backstabbing and manipulation. Francisco Pizarro followed suit in Peru, capturing the Inca Emperor Atahualpa in 1532. Despite receiving a room filled with gold and silver as ransom, Pizarro executed Atahualpa anyway. Talk about a bad refund policy. The Spanish Inquisition, established in 1478, took religious persecution to new levels. Under Torquemada, Grand Inquisitor from 1483 to 1498, thousands were tortured and executed. Their crime? Not being Catholic enough. Clearly, these guys took fashion police way too seriously. In 1492, the same year Columbus set sail, Spain expelled its Jewish population. About 200,000 Jews were forced to convert or leave. The Muslims got the boot in 1501. Spain's idea of diversity was apparently limited to different types of Catholics. The empire wasn't all doom and gloom, though. They did introduce Europe to chocolate, potatoes, and tomatoes. Of course, they also introduced the Americas to smallpox, so let's call it a mixed bag. Spain's vast empire began to crumble in the 19th century, with most of Latin America gaining independence. They clung to Cuba until 1898, losing it in a war with the United States. Talk about a bad century. The empire officially ended in 1976, when Spain gave up its last African colonies. After nearly 500 years, the empire, where the sun never set, finally called it a day. The Ottoman Empire. Step right up to the Ottoman Empire, where sultans ruled supreme and expansion was always on the menu. From 1299 to 1922, these guys turned a small Turkish state into a transcontinental powerhouse that would make even Alexander the Great say, not bad. It all started with Osman I, who founded the empire in 1299. His descendants clearly took the family business seriously. By the 16th century, they controlled much of Southeast Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. The Ottomans had a unique way of building their army, the Devshirme system. They'd snatch up Christian boys, convert them to Islam, and train them as elite soldiers called janissaries. Talk about an extreme recruitment policy. Mehmed the Conqueror lived up to his name in 1453 when he captured Constantinople, ending the Byzantine Empire. He turned the Hagia Sophia from a cathedral into a mosque, which is one way to redecorate after moving in. Suleiman the Magnificent, ruling from 1520 to 1566, brought the empire to its zenith. He besieged Vienna in 1529, expanded into Hungary, and even allied with France against Habsburg Austria. Clearly, he took magnificent as a challenge, not a compliment. The Ottomans weren't just about conquest, though. They were surprisingly tolerant for their time, allowing religious minorities to practice their faiths, as long as they paid the jizya tax. Freedom of religion, but make it profitable. However, things took a dark turn in the empire's later years. The Armenian genocide of 1915 to 1916 saw the systematic extermination of 1.5 million Armenians. It was a brutal reminder that even tolerant empires can commit unspeakable atrocities. The empire's decline was a slow burn. They lost Greece in 1832, Egypt became independent in all but name by 1867, and the Balkan states slipped away in the early 20th century. World War I delivered the final blow. The Ottomans picked the losing side, and by 1922, the once mighty empire was reduced to modern-day Turkey. The sick man of Europe had finally succumbed, leaving behind a complex legacy of cultural fusion, architectural wonders, and cautionary tales about the dangers of imperial overreach. The Belgian Congo Free State. Welcome to the Belgian Congo Free State, where free was the biggest misnomer since the Holy Roman Empire. From 1885 to 1908, this wasn't so much a colony as King Leopold II's personal playground of terror. It all began in 1885 when Leopold II of Belgium convinced other European powers to grant him personal ownership of the Congo Basin, an area 76 times larger than Belgium. Leopold marketed his venture as a humanitarian and philanthropic mission to civilize the Congolese. In reality, it was all about extracting rubber and other resources. Spoiler alert, there was nothing humanitarian about it. The Force Publique, Leopold's private army, enforced rubber quotas with brutal efficiency. Their motto might as well have been, hand over the rubber, or we'll take your hands. And they meant it literally. Soldiers were required to provide a severed hand for every bullet used to prove they hadn't wasted ammunition on hunting. Villages that failed to meet rubber quotas faced horrific consequences. Men were murdered, women were raped, and children had their hands chopped off. It was a reign of terror that would make even the most hardened dictators wince. The death toll? Estimates range from 3 to 15 million Congolese. That's about half the population. Leopold managed to depopulate an area the size of Western Europe without so much as setting foot in the Congo. Meanwhile, Leopold was using his ill-gotten gains to build lavish public works in Belgium. The royal greenhouses of Laeken and the Cinquantenaire Arch in Brussels were essentially funded by Congolese blood. The horrors of the Congo Free State eventually came to light, thanks in part to missionaries and journalists like Edie Morel. International pressure forced Leopold to give up his private fiefdom in 1908. The Belgian Congo Free State stands as one of the most brutal regimes in history. It wasn't the longest-lasting empire, but in just 23 years, it managed to set new standards for colonial cruelty. Leopold II proved that sometimes the real monsters wear crowns. The Third Reich, 1933 to 1945. Welcome to the Third Reich, where fascism met fanaticism and the world trembled. From 1933 to 1945, Nazi Germany wrote one of the darkest chapters in human history. It all began when Adolf Hitler, a failed artist with a chip on his shoulder the size of the Rhine, became chancellor in 1933. Within months, he had transformed Germany into a one-party state. Democracy? More like goodbye crazy. The Nazis wasted no time implementing their racist ideology. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped Jews of their citizenship and prohibited them from marrying or having relations with persons of German or related blood. Apparently, the Nazis thought they were not just a political party, but a particularly nasty dating service. Then came the Night of Broken Glass, or Kristallnacht, in November 1938. In one night, Nazi thugs destroyed 267 synagogues and 7,000 Jewish businesses. It was urban renewal, Nazi style. World War II kicked off in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. Hitler's blitzkrieg tactics initially seemed unstoppable. France fell in just 6 weeks in 1940, prompting the Germans to wonder why they had so much trouble with it in the previous war. But the real horror was yet to come. The Holocaust, the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews and millions of others deemed undesirable, remains one of the most horrific genocides in history. The Nazis industrialized mass murder, turning death camps into grotesque assembly lines. Nazi scientists conducted brutal experiments on prisoners. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death, was particularly infamous for his twin studies at Auschwitz. Mad scientists were no longer just for communists. The tide turned against Germany after their invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 and the entry of the U.S. into the war. By 1945, the Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years had crumbled after only 12.
It is a new notifications. Maybe we won't see a movement. Try Nature, the #1 pharmacist recommended vitamin and supplement for me.
Second Persian invasion of Greece. Everything about this started because Xerxes I, ruler of the Achaemenid Empire, wanted revenge. His dad, Darius I, had already tried to conquer Greece a decade earlier and got his butt handed to him at the Battle of Marathon. Xerxes wasn't about to let that slide, so he spent years prepping for a massive invasion. This wasn't just a weekend party. He conscripted soldiers from every corner of his empire, built supply lines, and even commissioned a pontoon bridge over the Hellespont to move his army. Casual empire stuff. By the time his forces were ready to roll in 480 BC, they were massive. Somewhere around 100,000 to 300,000 soldiers, depending on which ancient source you want to trust. Either way, it was a logistical nightmare waiting to happen. The invasion started with Xerxes marching his army through Thrace and Macedon, basically forcing local leaders to either join him or get squashed. Meanwhile, the Greeks, who were usually too busy fighting each other to do anything useful, actually got their acts together. Sort of. Sparta and Athens took the lead, which was like asking a lion and a shark to play nice. Sparta brought its badass warriors, and Athens had a navy that could outmaneuver a drunk octopus. Together, they planned to block Xerxes at 2 key points: the narrow pass of Thermopylae on land and the Strait of Artemisium at sea. Thermopylae is where things got spicy. King Leonidas of Sparta and about 7,000 Greek soldiers, including his famous 300 Spartans, dug in at this choke point. Xerxes, probably thinking this was going to be easy, sent wave after wave of his soldiers to break through. If you watch the movie, or at least know how it ended, you know it didn't work. The Greeks held the pass for 3 days, cutting down Persian forces like weeds in a garden. Then, a local snitch named Ephialtes ratted them out and showed the Persians back route. Leonidas and his men were surrounded, but instead of running, they stayed and fought to the death. Like you'll see Leonidas dying while on his knees, or that could have been done for dramatic effect, but he died. So yeah, Xerxes technically won at Thermopylae, but it cost him a ton of money, and any illusion that this invasion would be a walk in the park. Meanwhile, at sea, the Greeks were holding their own at Artemisia. The Athenian-led navy, commanded by Themistocles, managed to fend off the Persian fleet in a series of boom moves. But when word came that Thermopylae fell, the Greeks had to retreat. Themistocles left messages on the shore suggesting that Ionides and Xerxes' navy should switch sides. It didn't immediately work, but it planted seeds of doubt. With Thermopylae taken, Xerxes marched south and torched Athens. Yet, he burned the city to the ground. But the Athenians had already evacuated to the nearby island of Salamis, where their navy was waiting. Xerxes, feeling pretty confident after his big bonfire, decided to finish the Greeks off at sea. He parked his fancy golden throne on a hill overlooking the Strait of Salamis to watch the action. Themistocles lured the Persian navy into the narrow strait, where their numbers became a liability. The Greek ships, smaller and more maneuverable, rammed and sank the Persian vessels left and right. Xerxes had to sit there on his hill looking at this as his fleet got absolutely wrecked. By the end of the battle, the Persian navy was in shambles, and Xerxes had lost his best chance of securing the Aegean. In the end, Xerxes' big invasion was a colossal failure. He lost thousands of men. His navy was in pieces, and Greece stayed free. Meanwhile, the Greeks got a massive ego boost and started telling themselves that they were the defenders of freedom and civilization. Mongol invasion of Japan. Kublai Khan, and someone clearly not used to hearing no, set his sights on Japan in the late 13th century. By this point, the Mongols had steamrolled most of Asia and figured Japan would be just another spot on their empire. Kublai sent a series of friendly letters demanding that Japan submit to his rule. The Japanese government, led by the Kamakura shogunate, did what any self-respecting nation would do when confronted with unsolicited threats. They ignored him. Kublai, who obviously didn't handle rejection well, ordered an invasion in 1274 to teach Japan a lesson. The first invasion started with an armada of around 900 ships and somewhere between 15,000 to 40,000 troops. The fleet included Mongols, Koreans, and Chinese forces, all crammed together and probably seasick as heck. They landed on the island of Tsushima and then on Iki, where they slaughtered the locals. That's their definition of friendly gone wrong. From there, they moved to Hakata on the northern coast of Cuba. The samurai fought back with everything they had. The Mongols, who were used to facing disorganized armies, were shocked to find that these guys actually knew what they were doing. Sure, the Mongols had tactics, like coordinated infantry and archers who could rain arrows like confetti. The Japanese weren't impressed. This is where nature came in and said, "Hold my sake!" A massive typhoon called Kamikaze swept through and obliterated the mountain fleet. Ships were torn apart, soldiers were thrown into the sea, and whatever was left of Kublai's army moved back to the mainland. The invasion failed miserably, but Kublai had more men in his army. In 1281, Kublai had rebuilt his fleet and was ready to give Japan number two. This time, he went even bigger. He assembled two separate fleets, one in China and one in Korea, with a combined force of around 140,000 soldiers and nearly 4,000 ships. The Mongols landed again at Tsushima and Iki, doing what they do best. The Japanese defenders had spent the year in the first invasion building coastal defenses, including walls to keep the Mongols from landing easily. This slowed down the invasion, forcing the Mongols to fight battles they weren't prepared for. Meanwhile, the Japanese navy harassed the Mongol ships, using small boats to raid the massive fleet under the cover of night. It was a hit-and-run nightmare for the Mongols. Then came round two of Mother Nature's snap. Another massive typhoon rolled in, and the Mongol fleet was caught in the storm. It was a full-blown maritime apocalypse. Ships were smashed against rocks, soldiers drowned, and supplies were lost to the sea. By the time the storm passed, the Mongol invasion was in ruins. Kublai's grand plan to conquer Japan was dead in the water, literally. British invasion of Afghanistan. In 1839, the British, being the overly confident empire of the world, decided Afghanistan needed stabilizing. Translation: they wanted to make sure Russia didn't start cozying up to the region. So they stuck their noses where they didn't belong, backed up an unpopular trumpet, and assumed everything would magically work out. They marched into Afghanistan with around 20,000 soldiers and their pick for the throne, Shah Shuja, while picking up the reigning Dost Muhammad Khan. Period. No one told the British that the Afghans didn't take time to foreign invasions or rulers imposed by force. At first, the British acted like they owned the place. They took power, put Shah Shuja on the throne, and threw themselves a big part. But here's the thing: more than being unpopular, Shah Shuja is hated a lot. The Afghan tribes saw him as a seller, and the British as arrogant invaders. Meanwhile, the British are sitting comfortably in power, underestimated just how pissed off the locals were. They reduced their troops, moved into winter quarters, and acted like the whole mission was already a success. By late 1841, an Afghan nobleman named Akbar Khan started stirring up resistance, rallying tribes against the British. Attacks on British troops and officials became more frequent. Then, in November, a full-blown uprising erupted. The British found themselves under siege, cut off from supplies, and out of touch with reality. They tried negotiating with Akbar Khan, but to no good. Instead, he demanded the British leave Afghanistan entirely. The British, led by Major General William Elphinstone, commanded his leadership skills as sharp as West Flemish agreed to retreat. In January 1842, they packed up their remaining forces, along with their families and camp followers, and started marching out of town. It was 16,500 people, including 4,500 soldiers and about 12,000 civilians. They thought Akbar Khan had promised them safety. It was the dead of winter, and the group was marching through narrow mountains. The fish were woefully unprepared for the freezing temperatures and the ambushes. Soldiers closed to them. Civilians were picked off, and entire sections of the column were wiped out. Elphinstone, proving his work yet again, made one terrible decision after another, including stopping to negotiate with Akbar Khan mid-retreat. This accomplished nothing except wasting time and getting more people killed. Of the 16,500 people who left Kabul, only one European survivor made it back to the British-held garrison in Jalalabad. His name was Dr. William Bright, and he stumbled into the fort half dead on a wounded horse. When asked where the rest of the army was, he reportedly said, "I am the army." It was a level of understatement. The British had practically had nothing to do. A few others were taken prisoner and later released. But the British prison, it was one of the most humiliating defeats in British military history. The old days of North Korea. In 1950, North Korea invaded South Korean War. The United States, leading the United Nations coalition, jumped in to push back the North Koreans. At first, things looked unfavorable. The North Korean army